Right. Okay, we're going live and we're early because I don't care. We should talk about things. So yeah, so we're
We're the
talking
most fun
about
listening podcast. Nobody cares.
yes, and everybody. Josh, I think Clayton's going to be joining us. I can link up with Josh. There's his link to training with him is in the description. Thank you for not joining us, America and the world. Yeah, so the notification will go out in 2 minutes, but we started already. So
Yeah, and if you
yeah,
guys
we're
go to
talking.
my website, I actually just put a giant maintenance page up because I got a lot of changes coming, but it's probably gonna be like another month or two. But it's a maintenance page. But you can still, I still have like contact linked up there. So if anybody wants to do something, just shoot me a message.
You should put an opt-in. You should put an opt-in. At least collect an email, right? So if they're
That's what I
going
have.
there,
Yeah. I got
okay, good.
that
That's it.
still. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, yeah. So just drop your email in. I'll let you know when everything's up and running. So yeah. So what I was talking about is I was like, my wife and our close friend are looking at me like they're walking around like I have a stick up my ass. And for some reason, for the last like few weeks, I've been actually, you know, because my wife usually handles it, but I felt like I should, I don't know, like help curate the Facebook and Meta comments that people post. And I'm like, look, between we have self defense training and we got concealed body armor. Now, you would think that you know people wouldn't be. I don't know. I understand when people are like, "Oh, it's a shame that we need this product." I get that. For the body armor, I fucking get it. I understand it, dude. It's like I developed it because there was an active shooter event like down the road. So yeah, I get it. But instead of just being like, "Oh well, you know, that sucks," we decided to kind of do something about it. And I had one guy today that was again every once in a while I get like, "Can't believe you're profiting off of people's um
Fears and
about
violence in the
fears and
nation.
pain and
Yeah.
stuff like that." And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I go, I know. I go, I'm like, what do you tell your oncologist? Right. And then this guy's like, someone posted something about healthcare, which I didn't understand and then someone else was like, I was just going to post that. It was like, okay. And then other guys like, you're comparing yourself to, you know, healthcare
Being a
and
doctor?
cancer
How
research,
dare
being
you?
doctor. I'm like, no, because this shit actually does what it's supposed to do. I'm like, this shit actually works.
Oh
So,
man.
I'm like fucking like, yeah, and I fucking sit there and I ruminate about it. And they're like looking at me like, okay, what's wrong with you? I'm like, yeah, I shouldn't be dealing with the comments again. I'm just not, that. And it's funny because again, I'm thinking like, I'm looking at these people and it's like, of all the things you have to go past to get to an ad for body armor, right? I'm like, are you just like, did you run out of like MAGA sites? Right? I'm like, have you run out of like, do you go through all the gun manufacturers? And I don't understand.
You make up a really good point because and I'm going to explain this for a second. You make a really good point because like not only am I obviously subscribed to the self-defense
What's up,
company, right,
Clayton?
Facebook page.
All right,
Hey,
yeah.
Clayton.
What's up, buddy?
So not only am I naturally subscribed to the self-defense company like Facebook page, right? So I should get your stuff, okay? But
Yeah.
like I obviously everybody knows I do firearm stuff, right? So I'm always looking at
Right.
firearm stuff, all these things,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Survival skills, et cetera, et cetera. I can tell you that I hardly ever see the body armor advertisements. So if people are seeing them, like I wonder what kind of stuff they're constantly looking at that Facebook is like, this guy needs body armor.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're in. We do like the way we do our ads. We run like these really like targeted interest groups, like CrossFit, outdoors, or some
Right,
random
obviously,
stuff, like scientific. Like Dave is sitting there, like my Meta ads manager, like smoking a lot of weed. Him and his assistant, they're just like they do all this crazy crap. So, we're getting. So I'm gonna look a little bright. Okay, so we're getting like. We do test like audiences all the time, right?
Of course,
so
yeah.
we do get some random stuff, but yeah, man, like when you're sitting there, these people are just fucking like, so what I was saying before, they're just like, the guy, obviously with I can't tell if these people are real or not. They can't be real. They can't,
They're just trolling you,
you
man.
know, it's like, they're like,
That's what you want to hope though, right? You want to hope they're trolling you, but they're probably not.
Right. It's like, oh, I mean, it's like everybody, even the guys who are experts, like I had one dude, he's like, when it says, NIJ tested, I could send a t-shirt for testing. I'm like, dude, it's certified. He's like, I looked all over the site. I'm like, you didn't look really hard. I go, you got to look under the products. It's listed like under the products and on the armor page. So you can literally download the cert. So I'm like, it's there. Oh, and by the way, if you don't like our armor, use your own. It's fine. I don't care. We sell it.
Just buy the backpack. Yeah.
Buy the backpack or the jacket, dude. Who gives you shit? Right? I'm like, I do not care. And that's what, you're looking at it. All of a sudden, okay, conversation stopped. I'm like, I know Tim's like, stop giving people too much credit. Well, I was saying, I'm like, I can't figure out the mindset to sit there and just post negatively on we're really anything, like if you're something,
but
you're
much
like,
less an advertisement.
Yeah, it's like weird,
It makes me wonder if people realize it's an advertisement or not. Like, I don't know. How do you not know though?
I think it is. They do. It says ad right on there. If they,
I know, right?
And they're looking at it, and I'm sitting there, they're posting, and I'm like, I'm like, again, with all the crap to post on, this is what you're doing.
People with too much time on their hands, man. That's
like,
all it is.
Right. I'm like, there's so much other stuff to deal with. And it's like some of these guys, like I was saying before, Clayton, you go to their page and it's nothing but like memes and pictures of like Trump and the Ukrainian flag and, all the shit and complain about the stock market and all this other stuff. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I watch that and I get like, I'm stressed. I'm like, this person, I'm like, this is what you do all day. Like, this is where you're like, that's a good one. There was one guy who literally had like 100 Trump memes like ready to go, and he was just load them up. I'm like, holy crap! I'm like, who curates a library of bizarre memes? And I'm like,
the best part about that is the more comments you get, even if they're negative, like it just boosts your post.
Yeah, it does totally. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Bad press is still good press.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm like, that's what I'm just saying. I'm like, Dave, I'm like, but it's, funny. I'm like, guys, got the Ukraine flag. I'm like, oh, you're all for, sending people you don't know to go die.
Yeah.
But you're pissed off about, body armor or self-defense.
Yeah. Well, one thing I do have to tell you, Damian, is I took the plates out of my I got the emergency.
You got a first responder.
First responder, that's him. Yeah. I did take the plates out of that and put them in my duty vest on top of my soft armor.
Oh,
so
good.
Now I'm in conjunction with. So here, once I get some things stabilized, I'll probably be buying 2 more plates from you to go back in the backpack.
Get the
that way I'm locked the plate.
Yeah, let me know when you want to order. I'll send you over a coupon. You get the ultralights because I think you got steels. So get the ultralights.
I got the ultralights.
Oh,
that's why I put them in my. Yep. Yeah, so they're pretty light. A hell of a lot lighter than my steel.
Oh yeah,
but
a lot. They're like
now I got rifle
pounds.
protection. In my along with my soft duty armor stuff. So
those are
working great.
Yeah, they're standalone. So
yep, they are. They are.
Yeah, and Tim just posted. Think about the lady that commented that bad people potentially taking the SDC training yesterday. It's hysterical. It's like it's not wrong. I mean, yeah, you could. I'm like, I mean, bad people get into a lot of things. Bad people become teachers. Bad people become cops. Right? I'm like, there's a vetting process, but you don't know. People become bad after. So, there's always like. I was like the one where somebody's like, hey, what if you face somebody else with this type of training? I'm like, go first.
Well, then you better be at the top of your game. You better know your shit.
Right.
That comes up a lot, actually. Like, I've heard that comment multiple times. Like, what happens if you're fighting somebody else who's doing the same thing as you, and you're just like, go
Be
faster, harder, or run away?
Yeah, like, first off, you probably won't know until after. It's not like you're sitting there, like, it's not kung fu theater where you're like,
yeah, you killed my brother. Now I kill you.
I remember. Like, anytime you're teaching
5 deadly venoms,
Yeah.
let's go.
Anytime you're teaching like the interview stance, people are like, it's like, oh, keep your hands higher than theirs, and it's like, so what if they start doing it with you? And it's like, then obviously the person is just messing around with you. So you have one or two options.
Right.
Recognize that they know what the interview stance is and decide to leave or attack first.
Right.
Yeah, it's always go first. If he's a better shot than me, shoot first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have more bullets than he does.
Have more bullets, right. Goddamn. All you gotta do is go first and be accurate.
Yep.
I just it's just funny. So quick couple anecdotes. One was just happened, and this was like brutal. It was like, so I'm going to like do some PT at the field, and I'm walking, and I see a recently hit deer like in the road, like right next to them. So I'm walking, and there's police station, deer is on the road. So, and the thing is like still moving, looks like to me. So I'm like, oh, fuck, this poor guy's gonna have to fucking, either drag it someplace and shoot it, because it's like the middle intersection of town. So it's like, they're not gonna sit there and execute a deer there.
Right.
So I just so happen, and I see the chief, who's a buddy of mine. He's sitting outside on the phone. I'm like, hey man, I am so sorry to tell you this, but deer got clipped. It looks like it's alive. So we walk over, and he goes, and while we're doing that, some guy in a dump truck like grabbed it by the hoof and like pulled it on the side of the road. Better man than me. So anyway, he just didn't want to run over it. He couldn't go around it, right? So we're sitting there, we're looking at it. And I'm like, is that moving? He goes, no, that thing's dead. He goes, there's a foal inside there. I'm like, oh man. I go, I looked at him, I go, I got depressed. I go, I'm gonna go cry. I just was like, oh my God. It was like, he's like, oh, probably, he's like, Memorial Day years ago, which is a little later in the season, he did cut one out, and it came out, and it actually walked in the woods with a couple other deer, like came out and kind of grabbed it. I'm like, oh, like, you don't think it got trafficked? So anyway, he said this, he goes, it's probably a little too soon. It was, I'm like, oh, I didn't know you're a veterinarian, but okay. I was like, it wasn't good. I was just like, I'm like, I said shit. I'm like, God damn, man. I'm like, of all things. So yeah. So Clint, what's going on with you, man?
Well, not long after our podcast, last week, I went out to finish working on my truck, putting the brake pads and shocks and the tires back on, and popped the distal tendon in my right bicep, tore right through it. So my bicep on my right arm rolled up like an old window shade. The kind you pull a little bit, let go, and it rolls up. Now, about 15 years ago, I had popped the tendon at the top of that same bicep, the proximal tendon. Well, the inside, the short one. There's two tendons at the top. I popped that. That took 2 surgeries to fix. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to next Friday. I got the MRI Monday. Me and the surgeon go over the results Wednesday so he can present his repair plan to me. And if I'm okay with it, if I like what he's got to say and he can answer my questions, then Friday I go under the knife.
Yeah, so, I was going to say, definitely consider getting it repaired. I tore my pec.
I tore
my pec, and I never got it repaired, and it's still and I'm like, it's like, and that was like in my 30s, that I did it, and I should have gotten it fixed. It was like, you know, because now it's like my bench is like for crap.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm like, yeah, shit. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's my right arm, and you know, that shotgun gets heavy whenever you running it for 6 or 8, 10 hours a day training on people or trying to train people. And I got to have the strength and the range of motion in that arm. I don't have much choice. Yeah. And plus, it's hard to swing a battle axe with a busted arm. I mean, you know.
Yeah. I don't even want to know.
Well, you see one of my babies on the wall there. I collect them. Medieval bladed weapons, which that one's not a medieval reproduction. That's a fantasy sword, if you would. I have a few of those, but most of them are historical reproductions.
Okay. And do you have any ones from like antiques?
But not any authentic ones. No, okay. I don't have the budget to afford that. I wish I did.
I can't even imagine how many actually survived.
Most of them are in museums. There's not really that many compared to the number that there were, of course.
A lot
some of them are in pretty foul shape, especially ones they found in rivers or river banks. Northern Europe, they find a lot that have been in the water or in the mud, and they're eat up, but you can still recognize what they used to be. Some of them, you know, so they're pretty tough stuff. And some of them are like in peat bogs and stuff where there's no oxygen, so they don't oxidate, and rust is bad. They get stained. They're real dark. But the authentics, that's above my pay grade, brother.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, for years I wanted to get like an actual katana. You know, and if you could get one that's like out of Japan, because I have a tendency not to let them leave the country. You can't even bring a fake sword in.
Yeah.
No, they'll be like, yeah, that's gone. You know, so I mean, there's just their culture was so surrounded by it. I mean, other than, you know, how, you know, MacArthur dumping a bunch into the, you know, Sea of Japan. You know, and whatever guys stole off of, you know, soldiers that you know they brought back from the Pacific Theater and pre-World War II, really anything that would have made it over here. There's not a lot outside Japan. You know, I don't even think
one of those babies would be sweet, wouldn't it? An authentic one.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Oh my god! Yeah. Especially one that, you know, you always want, you know, something that has actually been like used. It's got it's got a whole, you know, it's got like dude. There's like, I don't know now, because there's shit attached to that. You know,
that's what I was just gonna say.
Energy, right?
There's energy attached to it. I don't know if I want that in my house.
That may be bad juju. You know, it's like some dude who's a psycho, just, you know, executing people. They used to do with the POWs, they would do like test cuts with their swords on bodies and crap like that. I mean, yeah.
Right. The Tommy mat rolled up around bamboo cores, and if it worked there, then let's take it out and try it on one of the guys in the bamboo cage.
Yeah, it's a lot, you know, it's a lot easier to pull one of them out than to make a makawara to start cutting this thing. So
So interesting bit of trivia. There is a medieval sword named after my namesake, the Kaywood Viking sword.
I have seen one of those. Yes, not the authentic one, I don't think, but a repro.
Yeah, they've only ever found 2 of that exact style. One was the reason why it's named Kaywood is found near Kaywood Castle.
That's usually why they get those names, is the location that they're found.
Yeah. And then the other one they found was in the tomb of some Viking chief king, and that's the only 2 they've ever found. But yeah, you can buy replicas of them and stuff.
So they've only found like 2 Viking swords?
No, 2 of the Kaywood swords.
2 of the Kaywood swords.
Yeah, so there's always, you know, they classify the swords based on like shape, based on how the pommels are, the guards, all those things, length, right? And so based on all those parameters,
straighter blade,
if they find more than one, especially if they find more than one or one that they haven't seen that's like got all the same patterns, then they're like, oh, it's a new classification, right? Some other person was making a sword, right?
So,
And now they found two, they're like, oh, this was a specific style, right?
Yeah, and there seems to be a lot more swords survive than things like battle axes and maces and things like that, because they think the sword. I mean, am I wrong? It's just because with medieval,
I think axes were probably repurposed a lot for like
they were melted down.
They just got
easier.
Exactly. They just got like repurposed, reused, etc. Swords, and plus swords were like the, like in today's, like the American military,
status symbol.
M4, right?
Yeah.
So swords were like the M4. Like every person who was not a, peasant foot soldier had a sword, right?
Right.
Right. Yep. And then the typically the axes and the other implements were kind of like they were in the Japanese weaponry. They were repurposed farm implements a lot of times.
Right.
They just tweaked it a little bit, and hey, man, this will cut something on the farm. It'll cut something on the battlefield too if we tweak it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, especially if like we talk about, using like shit from a Home Depot. That's you use what you do. It's because I studied. So I was like studying Bondo for a while, but that's a whole other thing where, they're one of the guys who was studying the kukri, went over there, and he's like, why are these guys so, good with this? He's like, I can't get it. It's like, because they use it every day. Butcher, plant, for everything. So it's like, it's in their hand. I'm like, they're just they're doing, thousands of cuts, when they're working, and it's just, that's what it is, and it doesn't matter. So, you're looking at. It was funny. So that was Bondo was founded by this guy, Dr. G, and it's like GUI. He's most likely dead now. But if you look at and he came up with this whole system about the Gurkhas and Bondo, and you basically created a martial art that was tied to Burma or Myanmar or whatever we're calling it these days. So like Taekwondo is to Korea and karate is to Japan, things like that. So when you look at people, need to think about martial arts, you have to think about them as a brand. So when because again, especially when we're talking about like nationality, we always think when we're learning this stuff that, oh yeah, they looked at everything and they created the best fighting system,
right?
Defeat all these other
You're
things.
new, aren't you?
I'm like, but that's the line you get. That's the line you get fed.
Yeah, this is your first day, I can tell. Yeah.
We used to do Taekwondo. The flying sidekick was to kick samurai off their horses. I'm like, I doubt that ever happened. Maybe one guy did it, but I don't picture. But you picture like hordes of like Koreans like flying through the air and knocking Japanese soldiers off their horses with a flying sidekick. I'm like, the Japanese are pretty good on a horse, man. Like they're gonna see some dude run it up. I'm sure the first guy was like, "What the fuck?" the second two guys,
they probably,
third guys, you're gonna be like,
they probably caught on pretty quick. Yeah,
I got this shit.
They also don't talk about what happened to the guy that actually jumped up and kicked the guy on the horse.
Right. Yeah.
No, they only know he got high. So, you look back at Taekwondo, for example, and the founder of Taekwondo, I forget his name, General whatever. I want to say Choi, but that's not correct. I used to know all this stuff cold. He was a black belt in Shotokan
too.
He was a black belt in Shotokan. So he's training over there. Shotokan, linear reverse punch, front kick, side kick.
Yep. One punch. Yep.
Yeah, and Iken Hitsatsu, that comes from the samurai, one cut, one kill, one strike, one kill.
Right.
So he formed Taekwondo in the 50s, and it was Choi's correct. Thanks, Tim. See, it's not all gone yet, fellas. So He got his black belt in Shotokan and came back and started developing a system. And there were some like every culture has its fighting arts, right? So it's not like, man versus man has always been violence. So there's always something, and he formalized it, incorporating kicks that were probably indigenous to what he maybe saw in Korea. Because again, you're looking at cultures, just, everybody took from the Chinese, everybody. So, like martial arts came through Okinawa, Japan. So, but he's creating this style, and he's like, well, Shotokan's at these kicks, we can add these, so we're going to emphasize kicks. And if you look at any Taekwondo sparring, it's basically boxing with your feet. There's not a lot of hand techniques. And you can look at Taekwondo and you can look at karate and you can immediately tell the difference. You can look at judo, you can look at BJJ, you can look at wrestling, you can look at boxing, you can look at kickboxing, you can look at Thai boxing, and automatically you can tell, what the differences are. So when you're doing like national, national sport, national identity, it's very, style has a lot to do with it, because that's how you create your brand. So, where did we start this conversation? How the hell Bondo. Yeah. So G created Bondo. The problem with him is that he's a stolen valor guy. He said he served in, and you can look up, Dr. MGGYE, stolen valor. You'll see pages and pages and pages. Said he was serving in Vietnam when he was actually in boarding school. He's wearing, whatever emblems. So, this guy was like painted himself as it was like the Burmese Rambo. I mean, he served in, Vietnam. He was in Korea. He was as a child. He was in Vietnam, right? He was like, hit all like the major war, all these major conflicts.
Sounds like someone else we know.
Yeah, it does. It does. But it's not uncommon. So it's funny, not even mentioning him. There's another guy who actually used to do bodyguarding for, and it was a legit bodyguarding business. And he had this made up story of how his system was from the Philippines, but it had a Korean name. And it was created by a guy, a former Special Forces major. Okay, stop me if you've heard this. Got separated from his unit in the Philippines. Somehow, a major is out on maneuvers. Okay, an officer gets separated. No means of communication. They lose him. Okay, there's no conflict. This isn't war. This is Manila, right? So, I mean, other than the Civil War, I mean, Josh, when was the last military conflict where the U.S. was remotely involved in the Philippines? Was it World War II?
Yeah, I mean, obviously World War II, we were obviously there involved, right? But so but I mean, what people don't realize is the Philippines, like the Middle East, is like always in conflict, right?
Always.
So, always. And part of that is because they have a massive Islam presence there. And so there's always stuff going on. And so American Special Forces, they're involved all the time there. So it's not like that. So not outside of reason that they're involved in some skirmishes or whatever. Right. Cause I mean, especially US Army Special Forces, that's their job, is to go with indigenous populations and do stuff.
Exactly.
Right? So,
So
not without the realm of possibility. Also, not without the realm of possibility for him to be a major, because I mean, their A-team commanders as captains, but he could easily get promoted while still a captain. Well, I mean, while still a commander of his A-team. So still technically could be a major.
Okay.
So not outside the realm of possibility.
Okay. So the story continues. He gets separated from his unit, and then something happened where he rescued a village elder. And then upon rescuing the village elder, they started training him and testing him every day to get him to become to learn all of their fighting secrets. And then they
is
released
this,
him with
is
their
this American
blessing.
Ninja, the movie?
I believe it.
Part
This
two, I
literally
think. The
came
second
out.
one.
So
Sounds a lot like the second one.
So we knew this guy, again, local dude. You know, he created, and I'll say what it is. It's Homdo. It's HOMDO. So created this, and he actually like put a book together. I still have the book with these words in it. I remember reading it, looking at my brother.
I'm going to go on a limb. Yeah, so I'm going to go on a limb, and I'm going to say what probably happened is he was there, Special Forces, possible. I don't know the guy, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He was there, Special Forces.
No one's ever met this guy, by the way.
Okay, great, awesome.
Okay, so keep going. Yes.
So we'll say he was Special Forces. He was there. Give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he did save some village elder, right? You know, because they're there, like dealing with the local population. Maybe he did. Yeah. I doubt he got lost. He probably was just hanging out. And you know, maybe they were like, "Oh, you're a soldier. I'm a soldier. I'll show you some of my stuff." And so maybe they showed him some techniques, and he like put a book together. That's probably like the closest to what happened, but you know, in reality, it was probably a lot worse.
Yeah, because this major then taught this guy who we don't know where or when this took place, right? So because there are people who know that he remained local and was working for a delivery company and some other stuff, and he spent some time in college, so the timeline's a little funky. Tim put right, Tim, nicely put, bro. If he was an LT, he would have been lost for sure. So the dude, so he created this world federation that only he was a member of, and that this major who I never saw or anyone ever met, who knows? So you're the head of a world organization with one instructor in one school. It
sounds like another international organization I've heard before.
Yes, it does. I was what the hell was
person? Also with the person we don't name.
Yes, yeah.
I was there for the creation of it, by the way.
Yes, you were. That dude. As far as I know, because again, talk about casually stalking. I think he. I don't.
We've talked about this before too.
Yeah, I think he separated or divorced from his wife. He got into BJJ, and then he was doing student, Kid Millionaire was the latest hook he was doing. And my first question is: Are all your kids millionaires? Or is one kid a millionaire? So he had this program to coach millionaire kids while his kids are, I don't know what they're doing, to be honest. So,
I mean, he was really good at marketing.
He was great, for sure. Oh, he was great. Yeah, he was great. So, what was it? Oh, so anyway, remember a couple weeks ago when Jason was on, we were goofing on those guys like breaking the kids' boards and doing this other stuff.
Yeah.
Like they were like doing the rolling, the fake ninja shit. So I got a copyright violation on Facebook for the for using copyrighted material from him, which, look, to be honest, it's not copyrighted. We're doing commentary. It's completely fine. I go, if that were the case, then all of the reaction videos that you see on YouTube,
every single one,
would be a copyright violation. So it's not. And plus, in order for it to be copyrighted, you actually have to go register the content with your government, pay a few $100 and get it copyrighted.
And do it for the intent of making money, which this podcast makes zero.
Right, exactly. So there's that. There's that. But it was funny. So I look on his, so of course I go to the guy's site, and I was going to bring it up and troll him, but he's got nothing but kids' pictures on there, so we're not going to do that. But the one thing that struck me out is like he was a world champ, right? Or 3-time world champ. And I'm like, world champ. I go, I was a world champ too. You could name your tournament whatever you want. And this is like so huge in like the point karate world. We're like, judo, you can't say you're having a world championship because there's actually a fucking world championship. There's Pan American Games. There's nationals. There's wrestling, same stuff. Boxing, same stuff. BJJ seems to follow along the same lines, though I didn't compete in that circuit. So, yeah, if you're like a they're real stuff that is like real, like you're like the Olympics. Oh yeah, we have that. But I fought in a couple world championships and won them, and it was the same guys I fought like a month before down at somewhere in Jersey. But just some guy calls his championship the World Championships.
Yep. International, because you got one guy who's part Mexican or something. Yeah.
Right. Everybody's invited. I put the invite out there. Anyone can show up. These 8 guys showed up. Okay, good. Right.
Yeah.
So
speaking of like real competition, so at my kids' jujitsu promotions last week or the week before or whatever it was.
Okay.
One of the like senior black belt dude brought one of his buddies or whatever, and apparently he's a 2-time America Cup judo champion.
Oh,
and yeah, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'm watching him, and he's like, gets with like some of the senior teenagers, and he's like actually doing takedowns, and I'm like, yeah, you are.
yeah. As I like to say to my son, I'm like, that's what that looks like.
And not to knock my kids' Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, but Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does not focus on takedowns.
Dude. Right. 1 and 2, it's like you have a guy who is competing on a national, international level. It's just different, man. It doesn't matter.
As I'm watching,
style has nothing to do with this, by the way, people. It's like that dude is a dude. So
he's just really good, right?
If you brought a Olympic level boxer in there, same shit. It's like,
and so I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, your guys' takedowns are atrocious. The whole gym's takedowns are atrocious. Like, it's just straight garbage. But you guys don't do takedowns. I get it, And I try to tell them all the time. And then they like watch me do a takedown, and they're like, wow, how did you do that? And I'm like, it's because my takedowns don't suck.
Right.
But anyways, I'm watching this guy, and I'm looking at my kids. I'm like, hey, are you watching that guy? Like, that's how takedowns are supposed to look.
And how come? Well, they're not going on the ground. Well, they're going on the ground, but he's on top of them in a position of advantage, and they can't do crap. It's not like they're going around like pulling guard. And, oh, by the way, his groundwork is probably pretty freaking good too.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, obviously he does BJJ as well as judo, right?
Well, I will say, when BJJ started, all of a sudden it was like judo would hardly ever go on the ground. Like they'd be like, that BJJ started, and that made them like, oh yeah, we kind of invented this stuff, so we should probably do it. All of a sudden they're like dusted off old books.
Right.
It's
funny because you watch like the Olympics or an international competition for judo, and like it's all about the throw, right? They don't get the throw, they stop, reset. Well,
because the reality is, it's like you've got very limited time on the ground, so you don't want to waste your energy. So you go down there.
But if you can get
so if you can chain it up off of a throw, or you're automatically going into it.
Right.
A lot of some of the guys do that, but a lot of them they just don't have to be, because you can build up a pretty good ground defense fast, and all is like when I'm getting in trouble.
Right.
Somebody's, somebody's sliding in, somebody's getting their hooks in, I can feel that. And, if you get a stalemate, they're going to bring you up quick. I mean, the goal is, even though there's submissions and pins, the real goal is to get that throw. And if you can hook up, because if you've got enough stamina, you can definitely grind a guy on top. I mean, I used to kind of like to do that, especially because I had my wrestling background too, so I don't mind being on top of somebody and grinding them. But I just it gets to be, I equate it to like freestyle and Greco-Roman wrestling as opposed to folk style. So you're just really, if you can't get something right away on the ground, you're going back up on your feet.
Right.
And that's the sport aspect of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, that's the rules, and that's why they focused on Olympic judo. If you look at Kosen judo, which is in the I think the eastern part of Japan, it's all ground fighting. It's everything. Like I said, I've got I've got Kawishi's My Method of Judo. It's a book. He was the head of the France Judo Federation. So Japan, and this is how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu got down to Brazil. They would send emissaries all over the world with the judokas, and that like judo was the part of the culture package. So Teddy Roosevelt had a dojo in the White House. He got a brown belt. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, see, you were this old when you learned that, Clayton.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I like to say.
4 years old.
I was this old when I learned that. So they, so that book has like everything, and that's kind of that's the syllabus I used to teach. And it has like neck dislocation, leg locks. It is everything you can imagine. And the samurai were doing this stuff, from the beginning. I mean, modern judo rules didn't come about so 1892. Kano officially founded judo, and then you're looking at the Olympics in 1954. So over those 50-year period, they started creating the rules of judo because it came out as jiu-jitsu, and they wanted to do something because he was a teacher. Obviously, he was like hooked up nobility wise. Otherwise, nobody would pay attention to him. So he's politically entrenched. He wanted something that was going to be more physically demanding and more interesting than calisthenics. So he came out, he developed this with there's like the pillars of judo. There was like 9 guys that were involved in creating it. All these, jiu-jitsu guys, because then by that point, jiu-jitsu was very lowbrow. They're coming out of like Edo period, so they wanted to, westernize.
The Meiji area, right? The British took over and said they could no longer practice combat arts, and so they're like, okay, we'll do judo. It's a sport.
Right. So out of that, like, and then you're looking at, and then after World War II, when they got completely, castrated, let's say, three major things came out. You had Aikido for the guys that were like, you know what, we love our culture, but we really don't want to fight anymore. It's like that kind of like, we're going to look at this exercise in like physiology, if you will. And then you had the Kyokushin guys with Masoyama, like, we're still a little pissed off, and we want to kick your nuts through your throat and punch your lungs out.
Chop horns off live bulls with her shoot those.
And there's controversy on that, by the way. So we'll get that in a second. And then there's judo, where it's kind of in the middle. It's like we don't want to kill you, but we don't want to just arrange flowers either. Right? So that was kind of like that was the happy medium. So funny you mentioned Masoyama, who is an animal, by the way. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. I say him, and then you got Kimura, Judo Kimura, there's a lot of dudes, but like Kimura is like the legend. And then you got Ueshiba.
Who was that dude who would like punch bowls or like tackle bowls?
That was Kimura. That was Kimura.
Oh, okay.
So not Kimura.
That was an animal.
That was I was just saying that was Jesus Christ, Masoyama.
Was that Masoyama? Yeah, that dude was a monster. What the heck?
Yeah. So the thing with the bull though was it was kind of, look, I mean, they do, it's martial arts, right? There's like parlor tricks involved. Like the bull
for sure
was very much on its last leg, and also they may have sawed the horn a little bit.
Just a little bit.
A little bit for some of the guys. It's not saying that Masoyama couldn't snap your neck with the shuto, but with the bull, and then it was like he's going, and at the end he felt kind of bad. It's like this whole freaking thing when you're like reading it. The one dude who I love from that period is post World War II is Don Draeger. I don't know if you ever get to like he wrote a ton of books, And he was the kind of guy that would go out and travel. And if somebody was practicing something, he would, he's like, okay, what's this thing all about? If you remember in Thunderball, James Bond was training in Japanese martial arts. Don Drager was the technical director on that. So there's pictures of him and Connery. Yeah, Tim, love Drager. Yeah, let's go. A picture of him with Connery. I mean, he was a seasoned combat veteran Marine. So he understood death and war and fell in love with Japan. And if you start reading some of his books, I mean, it's pretty incredible. Some people, he died at a young age. Some people think he was poisoned, the whole stuff. But I mean, people talk about
like Bruce Lee.
Yeah. I mean, people talk about Bruce Lee, but they don't know Don Drager. I mean, Don Drager was like, holy crap, judo, it's like fifth Dan, karate, Kyokushin. I mean, katana. I mean, oh my God, he just lived there and wrote. Him and Robert Smith wrote books and trained for I would say decades. I mean, until his death, that's what he was doing. He would just crank out books, and he would just, I guess, make enough to kind of support his lifestyle. Yeah. I mean, crazy stuff.
Living the life, man.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at look, you come through a war. He did piss off a lot of people because he was very honest. Yeah, exactly. So when you hypothesize, that's what Tim posted. Absolutely right. We hypothesized somebody poisoned him because like, all right, shut up. Because if what you're doing was bullshit, he would call it bullshit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a dude. Like you'll see him. Hold on, let me just pull up something. Everyone says like, you're looking at. Okay, you tell. I just see if the picture that I was looking at. Yeah, all right. Look at this freaking dude. Hold on. Share screen. Oh no. Yeah. Look at that dude.
Oh geez.
Yeah, he's a freaking stud, bro. A freaking stud. I mean, he again really was. What's funny is the guys that like a lot of guys who study Drager I don't even know half of them understand. A lot of them get into the sword aspect, the kendo aspect of it. But you're looking at 82. When did he die? I did a post on this too. One of the guys that was training with us actually trained with him, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's on the blog post. I mean, just really.
I saw 1982. If you go up a little bit, and that could have been it. Let's see when he moved here. And
where are we going? Okay,
1982 when he died. Yeah,
82.
Yeah, 1982.
Yep.
Drager said his life established people know his work from work in Japan, his involvement in martial arts. Yeah, 56 to 82, almost 30 years. But he also went to China, Indonesia, Malaysia, all over the place. And really, Hopology Society. I don't even know what happened to that. Let me just Google that for a second, because those were the guys who were Permanent Apology, Jared Wilson. Yeah, I don't see. I just see a Wikipedia entry and International Apology Society. There's some stuff on Dragon Door.
Hey, there's one in Sedona right there. Oh,
where's that? Let me go back.
Go back. Yeah. Go down to acronym filter. IHS, International Hopology Society, Sedona, Arizona. Nothing.
Okay, nothing. Yeah. The problem with this stuff, a lot of guys get into it, and this is where people will, people will complain But if you're doing something, right, let's say you love something, you're like, I love this so much. Okay, I don't want to charge any money for it. All right. Eventually, you're going to have to pay the bills. So what happens is it dies. And people, I always look at like
you have
Taekwondo.
Yeah, I was gonna say you have two issues when you want to do it for free, right? Because you love it. The first issue is A, you can't pay your bills, and then you have to work and don't have time to actually do it. And B, nobody takes it seriously because it's free.
Because it's free.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
I offer to teach people stuff for like well over a decade, like 15 years. Nobody would ever take a course. As the day I started charging, I had like 20 people sign up.
Yep.
Of course. Again, it's perceived value. And honestly, you should be compensated. And this is what we do with the instructor. I'm like, look, you've got a skill, you want something people want to know. And it makes it simple, because if it's for free, then they feel funny. But I know if I pay you, $100 for an hour, whatever, then I know after the hour's over, we're done. Right? I don't owe you anything else. You don't email it. You're not looking for anything else. I go, it makes it clean and simple. I look at Taekwondo when it came in the 80s, and people goof around, be like, take your dough and all sorts of stuff. But what they did is they put a value on, and even a premium on what they did, where the only thing you really had at the time, you had random schools, mostly judo at the time. There's also karate, but there was judo, and a lot of the judo clubs were in the YMCA, and they were charging like 10, $20. It wasn't a month. And now it's like, oh, Taekwondo is charging me, $80, $100 a month. This is in the 80s. Like, oh, really? And yeah, all these guys are driving nice cars and actually earning a living off of teaching something,
running it like a
business.
Yep.
And you're like, look, man, I'm like, you can hate on them all you want, but still around even today.
Yeah.
You still, there's plenty of towns with a Taekwondo school in it, right? Not a lot of judo clubs. There's like two, like near me, that are in like both of them are two towns away. There's BJJ schools now all over the place, right? Yep. They're not free, right? But Taekwondo set the model for it. Right. Josh knows. They're looking at, it's like, like the starving artist kind of bullshit, where, you're like, no, there's no nobility in that, because you're going to give a shitty product. If you were, how much better product you give when you're actually earning a living off of it. I'm like, holy shit, this is all I do. I don't have to worry about it. I'm not working a day job and worrying about that, and then come in here. It's like, God, man, look at this shit. And then what happens is, though, that the people that teach for free, devalue it. And then that's where the conflict lies. But the people who teach for free don't last forever. Life comes up and will kick them in the ass, because it has to. They can't, this is not like, you can't, cook food for me, or, give me a place to live. Hell. So, yeah, I mean, there's, so it's funny. I know
if anybody's curious, I'll get with you offline and I can tell you exactly how true all that is.
Right.
Yeah, I've only ever taught it for free too, so I know what you mean. And I never, of course, couldn't make a living at it. It was, I wanted to be doing it whenever I could, and so I just found some idiot that would let me beat on him, and he learned a little bit in the process.
Right.
It was a fair trade.
Right. But, even then, like, all of a sudden, there's three things that come up, right? It's work, health, family, right? Those are the three things that are always going to come up. None of this shit is permanent.
That's right.
It's always cyclical. You can put, like, if you get, and this is why we came up with the training system, is because if I get like 6 weeks out of an adult and they're training with us, by the end of those 6 weeks, you're going to fucking know a lot. And you're going to at least have something where it's like, look, man, practice, you've got some stuff to practice, and you've got drills you can do, and you've got keep your wits about you, and have your everyday carry. I go, you're going to be better than the vast majority of people walking the planet, and you're going to avoid a lot of crap too.
And that's the main thing. Yeah, just don't even be
having these schools, and you get these posts from these morons that are like, you need freaking, years. And I go, bro, that's because you're trying to run a business that requires that. And look, I'm like, if you want to do that, that's awesome. But for self-defense, that's not true. And you can't, you can't hold people learning to protect themselves hostage because you're pissed off. Right. I'm like, that infuriates me. Look, man, I've had classes with 50 people in them. I've had classes with no people in them. So there's no more lonely life than an instructor of anything, right? So you get it, and you're like, I know where those comments are coming from. One, because they've been fed this, because then they're getting into a system where, like, dude, I had to learn, like,
do it for years.
Yes. Why? Because contract says so. I'm like, I just, that's why I also loved like judo so much, because it was so fucking chill. Like, you go in, like, I went through like the karate, the bondo, the whatever the hell I was doing, all that stuff. And it was mostly from like American dudes, that were very much like very militaristic, very yell shit like that. I go into judo. It's like, okay, let's go. Like, okay. And BJJ the same way, right? I'm like, you're not lining up saying like yes sir, no sir, and you're late for class, someone yelling at you. It's like, I just was sitting in traffic because there's an oil tanker overturned. I'm like, now I got to do 100 push-ups because I'm late, and I'm paying for it.
Right, yeah.
I'm
paying this guy to beat the shit out of me every month. Well,
my boss made me work late. Now I just want to get to class, and now I go in and I got to do fucking push-ups. Why? Because it's your fault that you got a job. I'm like, it's not like you're dealing. It's not like you're dealing with. It's not high school football practice.
Right.
That's
right.
You're an adult. You got adult shit going on.
I know in high school, if like for football or wrestling, I'm like, look, you get out at this time, you got a half hour. I'm like, if you got to see a teacher, I go, you get like a couple of those. I go, but other than that, I go, your shit is in the locker room. You are changed and you are ready to fucking go. That means helmet on, strap buckled. When I blow this whistle, I go, just don't even. I go, just get to your spot, because that's a waste of fucking time. I go, that you fuck up. I'm like, yeah, dude, you're gonna eat some shit. So, for two adults, coming in late, like making them do push-ups, I'm like, what the hell is the matter with you?
Yeah.
So, Recon Method put, who are you guys? We're nobody, man. We're nobody.
And we like it that way.
Fucking nobody, dude.
We like it.
I just like, I just sit in my closet and eat saltines and water.
There you go. Peanut butter sometimes on them.
So yeah, man. So when I first got, and it was more like, to me, it was more like wrestling practice, or wrestling practice as an adult, where you would go to like the New York AC, or you'd go to where like real dudes were like working out. They didn't give a shit if you were late. It was a roll around. Like, you come in, you go, okay, you missed warm up, so you warm up by yourself.
Yeah.
And then you get into it. It's not a big fucking deal. You teach adults like adults, and even with the kids, it's not the kid's fault he's late. He's got parents. So that could be a factor. Yeah, the kid's dragging ass and doing it, but now that also means that the kid is not excited to be there. So what works better? Kids bitching to go into karate class because he hates it. And then when he finally gets there, you make him do push-ups?
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, what are you doing? Like, hey, man, good to see. It's okay to be nice. There's hard work. You don't have to be an asshole and not work, and you don't have to be an asshole and work hard. You can be nice and work hard. and, push yourself and teach them how to overcome, develop long-term goals, that I mean, delayed gratification, right? So, I just, you go through all this shit and you're wondering like, yeah, man, if people, especially adults with training, you're out of your mind. It's very rare, even with a kid, that you're going to get a kid that lasts more than 5 years.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's always something. And if, your kids get different interests, which they do, some kids start kids getting into sports, instruments, crap like that. And there's like cult like behavior of, that martial arts, club or dojo or dojang, whatever you're calling it these days, that, comes over. It's like, well, I think you're making a mistake. You're doing, all this shit. It's just like this weird, culty thing going to it. And I could probably say the same for yoga, Pilates, any other like the kind of spiritual.
Anything with a big dedicated following, right?
Yeah. Even like, CrossFit or which I've never been to. So, but I would imagine that's got kind of the similar, vibe going on.
For sure. For working out, for exercising, they're like, you don't CrossFit. What's wrong with you? Or you left CrossFit to go do something else. Like, how dare you? It's crazy.
Right. Well, it's weird
because CrossFit's not a great workout, but like that's how they are.
Yeah. You get burned at the stake for that, don't you? Some places.
Well, part of that is like, what do you mean you're doing? What are you doing? It's like, why aren't you? It's like, dude, it's like getting a fucking injection. It's like, why didn't you get vaccinated? What? It's not good enough for you, or you're making a mistake? Did I make a mistake? It's always like, it's like you're not, were you working out someplace better? Oh, you should stop working out. Is that possible? Like the whole fuck, it kind of fucks with their, with their reason to be there, right? You're just, it's like, okay, everybody's doing this. Everybody should do this. Well, everybody should do something.
Everybody should do something.
Not everybody should necessarily do this, or maybe I just got kind of bored and wanted to go do something else. As I said, I'm like, I don't expect people, if you really go through it, I'm like, you should be through everything within 12 months. If you did it, I'm like, that's just really, if you really kind of hammered down, but that's it.
I had a really proud parent moment the other day. So slowly over the last year, like my kids have all kind of been like, hey dad, because, so what I've said before on this show is like, I teach my kids to be very subjective and objective, like in their martial arts. Right. And to be like, recognize that what they're teaching you is crap sometimes. Right. And they've started to realize it as they watch it, right? As they start thinking about it and they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. Why am I doing this? So over the last year or so, each one independently over the year have been like, hey dad, I just realized that all of these belts are BS.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, they are.
Yeah. Right. Well, especially when you're in a combat sport, because if I can beat you, I can beat you. And that's where, like, that's what I loved about judo. Like, I would come in, I started in my 30s, really. I mean, I didn't do it when, and I got my ass kicked the first month. I was like, you didn't break me, I'm coming back. And, they didn't care, but they liked that I was strong, I worked out, I was in good shape, and I had potential. Let's call it what it is, right? So that's all that mattered. And then eventually, I caught up quick, and you're a yellow belt and you're a green belt, and you're like throwing brown belts and black belts, right? So, but then there's always like the guy who's like the ex, D lineman that comes in from, NFL D1 guy, and you're like pretty like, holy shit, dude. There was one guy that came into my club. I remember it was great, dude. I think his nephew trains on the platform. His name was Zoltan, right? Zoltan. But he was just like, I want to say Ukrainian. Dude, the guy hung sheetrock all day, right? And he was like 220. It's like, probably about 6 foot, but just like, animal.
Yeah.
And fucking comes in. So I'm like, okay, let's go. He's got no gi. I'm like, I'm wearing my gi. I'm like, whatever. Let's just, think it's first class. I'm like, let's just roll around, come in. Dude literally grabs me by my gi, just like picks me up. And I'm like, the instructor. I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. That's all he literally just grabbed me wherever he grabbed me, just lifted me up off the ground.
He's like, oh, you're lighter than sheetrock.
Right. I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm like quarter inch.
Put 3 screws in my ass. I'm good. I'll stay there all day.
Exactly, dude. I was staying there. I'm like, oh my God. I bet my reaction is just like, holy shit, that's awesome. And he's like, what? He didn't. Thank God he didn't know what to do with me next, other than push me to the wall.
Can you put me back down, please?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's good. Lesson 2. Dude, he's such a nice dude. But yeah, you don't know. But in karate, you got all your lines, your point sparring. There's a lot of shit you can get away with if you're just a massive pussy. Without really getting hit or tested. And even when you're in tournaments, I've got called for like excessive body contact. We're not allowed to hit the face, whatever, but I'm like, I'm kicking you as hard as I fucking can, by the way. It's your body. I don't give a crap. You're fine. I get called for excessive body contact and a bunch of things. It was both me and my brother were meatheads. And that would be very common. So, but again,
I'd get the same thing when I wrestled. They'd be like, Josh, tone it down. You're way too much.
Right. What do you mean? You toned me down. I'm like, you gotta stop me. Son of a bitch. Yeah. But, I just, it's, but you can, get away with that stuff. So I want to ask you, like the jiu-jitsu ranks at the school. Now, does he have a syllabus?
Yeah, they run a syllabus.
Oh, that's great. Mm-hmm. A lot of places don't.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, so, I mean, they like when they first kind of started, the syllabus was really loose. But as they've gotten like more experience teaching, more experience running a school, they've definitely picked up a syllabus and they run it a lot more. And then especially for the grading criteria, it's like very strict. Like this is the grading criteria for this specific rank, this specific belt, because you got like the 4 ranks in each belt, and then you go to the next belt and so on and so forth. So yeah,
that's what it was.
I will say it's nice that we don't have to pay extra belt fees, because I know a lot of like places do that.
Oh yeah, everyone used to do that. I used to do promotion fees and belt fees and crap like that. Yeah. So, oh yeah.
Yeah. We do pay for, like, if they get a new belt, well, obviously we'll buy the new belt, right? Obviously.
Right.
But, they don't actually make us pay for extra testing, because that would just be a hard no.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay, so you don't pay for promotion tests?
Nope. That's nice. You just show up and test. Yeah, they just test you in class, and then so they used to have like a testing day, and it was like all day. Everybody would come and test, and then you would do promote. Yeah, just turned into this super long day. So now what they do is, they'll be like, you'll do your training and stuff, and then like maybe like 4 weeks out from testing, they'll be like, all right, now we're focusing on our testing material, and then like the week of testing, it's like they'll test you throughout the whole week. So
okay, all right.
And most of the time, whenever you're told you're going to be testing soon, you've already passed the test. The instructor's already seen you do what he needs to see you do. Yeah. I mean, it's just a formality.
Yeah. So the one thing that they, they've, for the last like 5 years, they've been like, oh, attendance requirements, but then they would always waive the attendance requirements. But like this year, and like jiu-jitsu is really strict on their attendance requirements, especially as you get to like adult sized belts, quote unquote, right? You have to serve like so much time in each belt. Yeah. And so the professors were like, hey, we're going to start like being strict on attendance, but it's not unreasonable. It's like, you have to show up 50% of the time. Like, okay.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
But at the same token, if
you know it, you should be able to test, right?
Right. And some people are going to pick it up faster than others. Yep.
That's one of my, that's one of the reasons why I stopped going, was because the professors would get not like the schoolhouse professors, but their higher people would come for testing, and they would get super pissed because they'd be like, well, you only came to class a quarter of the time. I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm a working, responsible adult, and like I can only come a quarter of the time. And they're like,
I like having a
how do you know
house.
you know the material? And I'm like, well, let me test it, right? And so then I would crush it flawlessly, and then they'd be like, I hate you so much, like just like mad dogging me the whole time. How did you pass? Because you didn't come to class. And I'm like, because I
didn't need to.
I don't know. Like it's not that hard.
And you got to encourage that. That's why, like, when people ask about our testing or promotion, I'm like, whenever you're ready. I'm like, if you know it, I'm like, I'm not gonna put a time. I don't put a time limit on it, and I didn't even put it. I didn't even put it when I had the dojos. And I was like, if you're ready to go, okay. But we would have testing days. It just kind of made it simpler for us. Like, you can test. I don't care. We're not, we're taking attendance, but it's not like there's a requirement. I'm like, if you're paying, okay,
then you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about like judo was arbitrary. It wasn't arbitrary. It was kind of arbitrary until brown belt. So like you would go, and it was very competition based. So you would have to compete in tournaments. So if you compete in a tournament, you would get promoted. So if you do well, you get promoted. And that was kind of arbitrary. But then when you got the brown belt, you had to go to promotion tournaments. So you would all line up by weight, but everybody lied. So you would line up, and you'd have to beat 3 guys in a row in order to get your next rank. So by the time and that's to get what we call Batsugan, which you get automatic promotion. So you have to do that 3 times. So you'd have to beat 9 guys in a row in order to then you go to your promotion, and you do a couple katas. You do like nage no kata, the kata of throwing, and then there's I even forget the ground fighting kata, the newaza kata name. Oh my god, it's awful. So then you do like your katas with a partner, and then they'd ask you some techniques, and that's it. But at least you had to go like beat somebody, so it's funny, like the first time I kind of tied the first guy, and then I beat the next 3. So because if you tie, the new guy coming in stays out, and that guy and the other guy leaves. And then so it's funny because I remember my instructor Unesca, he's like, you on the mat for like 25 minutes. Like when I got off the mat, he goes, I kept looking. He goes, you're over there. He's like, you're on the mat constantly. I'm like, yeah. I go, dude, that was a long time. I mean, I fought straight for over 20 minutes. And then I remember getting home that night and lying in bed, just like shivering. Like everything was just kind of like, I'm like, yeah, like that happened. I mean, the other times, with wrestling, it was like in tournaments, you always had a break between rounds. Right?
At least a short one usually.
Yeah, the minimum would be like 45 minutes, at least to kind of get your shit together. And you hope, that the other guy, is going through the same thing too. Right. So, but at least you had that. This crap, I was like, because it was like, it's like point fighting, but with, wrestling. So it's like, when you're in a tournament, like they get your group up, right? You're like going, like a regular old tournament, not like, not like the New York Open, not like the Nationals, stuff like that. Well, even the Nationals, they, you go and you're like, okay, they just do the group right away. Everybody goes through. So by the end, you're going like, right after the other. They'll space it out so you get rest on the higher level tournaments. But the local tournaments, you just go again.
Just good. Yeah.
You're like, okay. I'm like, oh, man, that freaking sucks. But yeah, that was funny. It made me think of the first like UFCs when you could tell like a grappler developed that tournament because they had it set up like a wrestling bracket. They don't like any bracket. And they're like, oh, you're just gonna fight rounds. I'm like, dude, like, people are like punching people in the skull and getting knocked out and breaking bones. I'm like, this is prize fighting. This isn't grappling. So I'm like, that's why you got so many random guys who won, because you remember, like, a guy would break his hand and all of a sudden they drop, like, I mean, Tank Abbott, who was a freaking beast, but he was like, he would get dropped in the finals. So you'd have guys in the finals that were like, okay, like an alternate, and they would just do no fights under their belt, and of course, like, hey man, always like handled them, but you're like, yeah, dude, then they figured out, yeah, guys, this is boxing, this isn't, wrestling. Yeah. So, speaking of which, you might as well watch one video. Speaking of ground fighting, I wanted to share this.
Well,
this is funny.
I'm sure our viewers just been waiting for us to.
Right. We don't talk about it. We didn't show anything. Do you guys see that?
Nope.
Yep.
Oh, you can't? Oh, you can see it, right?
I can.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
I'll put the volume on. So that's a very big dude and a not so big dude.
Right.
I don't know how this started or why this started. Dude, I don't know who's messing with that guy.
Yeah,
I think fighting in a gym is a horrible idea. Look at all the weights and everything that's all over the place.
Yeah.
Not to mention that dude obviously lives at the gym. I wouldn't be messing with him either.
Well, you know the trick. If you're the new guy, on the first day you find the biggest son of a bitch in there, walk up, slap him in front of everybody. You get your ass beat once, and nobody else will ever mess with you again.
But this isn't prison. Gym.
I love that. My favorite prison joke is you want to be guy walks in, is like, sees a cellmate, big dude. He's like, do you want to be the husband or the wife? He goes, I'll be the husband. He's like, okay, we'll get over here and suck your wife's dick. Sorry.
Damn.
Sorry, kids. So, okay, here's your ground fighting. So, this is what that looks like. Dude, I don't give a shit, man. The feet are the best. The feet are the best.
Wait, are you saying size and weight matters?
In certain positions, yes.
This guy, I mean, look, this big dude is like being the nicest dude on the planet right now.
Yeah, he is. He is showing mercy.
He's sitting on the chest of a child. He's still talking shit. I love him.
Just play there, dude.
I'll kill you right now. What you going?
Yeah. Again, I file this under like, what the hell were you thinking?
Yeah.
Dude, I just, I don't know. I don't know if growing up if I would ever like even seen that kid against that man, that mountain.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from where you're getting aggressive? Even if the guy, I don't even know how that fight started. I don't even care, because honestly, what are you fighting over?
Right.
What are you possibly fighting over? You took my piece of equipment, right? You took my thing. And honestly, I would guess just because of the size of the big guy, he probably has some gym etiquette. I'm guessing, just be like, oh shit, man, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably like, hey, can you re-rack those weights? And the guy was like, screw you.
Right.
It could have been. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, dude, we do pick our shit up around here. I mean, okay.
Just based on the guy's, how he handled him. He just got him down, sat on him. He realized, once he put his hands on him, it probably was going to go probably went the way he expected.
Yeah.
But that's funny. Tim writes, but techniques always wins. Yeah, size and strength have nothing to do
Yeah,
with
they
real
do.
legs. Yeah, dude, I don't give a shit. You'd have to be really, really, really freaking good.
Yeah,
the whole
and
point is
lucky.
and lucky.
Yeah, like Dan Gable good. Like nobody else is that good.
No, dude, what are you doing? Right? I'm like, why are you? But again, not like. First of all, the whole thing is to me is like, just from where it is, it's like, why are you doing this? I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I said, we were coming out of a parking lot a few weeks ago. We're at a comedy show, and there was something like someone forgot their ticket, but there's a whole line backed up, and this guy came up to a regular guy, was like investigating what was going on, like he was going to solve all the problems. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? He came up. I wasn't in the car. I was standing outside looking for my buddy who was, kind of went on walkabout when he went to the bathroom. So he had the ticket, and there's another car in front of us. I don't know. Long story short, sitting there, the guy's like talking to my wife and my friend's wife, who's also my friend, obviously. Like interviewing them about what is going on. And I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, why don't you just go talk to the car in front, right? He's like,
they're closer to whatever's happening.
I'm like, we're all going out of the gate. That's the car that's stuck. I'm like, why don't you go talk to them? And he's like, what, you got a problem? And he's like, looked at him. I go, what the and dude, when I tell you this guy he was not a fighter by any stretch. He was just not anything, but it was fucking funny. I'm like, I just started laughing at him. I'm like, dude, I go, what are you doing? I go, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you better walk off.
Okay. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I don't care what you're saying. I'm like, I really don't. Like, that was great.
Yeah, just remember, guys, you don't have to go to every argument that you're invited to.
Right. Exactly. It's funny. I just, I'm like, dude, I'm like, I don't care. That's fine. I'm like, have a nice night. I was like, I don't, fuck you. I'm like, okay. I'm like, good night.
You wouldn't like it.
I'm like, you're a fucking grown man. I go, what are you acting like
right.
for?
Yeah.
I couldn't understand. I got another funny story after this, but Tim writes, I'm gonna kill this name, dude. Mariusz Puchanowski, 5-time world's strongest man, beat the hell out of one of the Gracies in the cage. Yet MMA, BJJ crowd still claims strength has nothing to do with it. Yeah, exactly, guys.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, this is why you use fucking weapons and all kinds of shit
Yep,
to cool the playing field. And this is what we advocate. When I laugh, when like people are like, well, you just have the hand. I go, dude, you have no clue what we're doing here. Like, if you're using an empty hand, I go, a lot of shit has gone wrong. So, like I just
you've already failed somewhere down the line.
One of my favorite awareness exercises is to find the biggest threat, and it's usually like some giant person.
Right.
And then I play the game of how would I handle this situation, right? How would I get through this?
Right.
And it's like always equalizer, take out the knees, and then run.
Right. Right. Always
knees, balls, and eyes. Yep. And then all that. Yep.
I got a funny story. So I'm walking on my usual park where I walk, and as I'm walking onto the path, it's a young couple there walking a dog. So I'm like, hey, how you doing? Good morning. And then literally like 2 minutes, not even 30 seconds later, I see the guy jogging. So I think he's like running, but he's kind of running with a little purpose. Skinny white dude, wasn't a threat by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't know. So I just kind of look at him because it struck me as odd. And then he's like, finally, I'm like, oh, okay, well, he's just jogging. So because he kind of like waved, I'm like, oh, okay. So then I kept walking, and he fucking comes up to me. And he's like, excuse me. I go, yeah, out of nowhere. He's like, are you single? So I haven't been single. First, I haven't been single in a long time. So like hearing these words, it's like so bizarre to me.
Yeah, like what?
I didn't even understand the question. I looked at him, I'm like,
right, yeah.
Of course, at a proper distance. But I'm like, hey, I'm like, no. And I go, I might not be your type either. Right. So then he's like, no, it's not for me. I go, look, I'm like, listen, man, I go, be honest. I go, if I get, if a gay guy, like hits on me, I take it as a massive compliment. So, I'm like, thank you. I'm like, thank you very much. And then she goes, no, 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 no. He's like, my mom. I'm like, what? He's like, I was, going to introduce you to my mom. I'm like, wow, that's really random. So I'm like, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm like, God bless your mother. That's like how I left it. And then I'm like walking away. So many thoughts went in my mind. One, as he's jogging over, is he like imagining me like at Christmas? Like waking up in the morning, like making them eggs. What's up, son? I'm like, I don't even know what is running through this kid's head because I know what runs through my head when I'm doing shit. I'm like, I've got shit like married. I've got him like, reading my eulogy. He's like doing all kinds of shit as he's like running over. Secondly, and this is the more disturbing thing, is like, if you're setting me up with your mom, you're basing it on me saying hello.
Yeah.
And a general appearance. Now, look, I have an ego, but I'm not Brad fucking Pitt. So, you would think at what point he would just be like, strike up a conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe just try to like do a little intel. Find out what it is. He just led with, are you single? I'm like, sure, I'll bang your mom. We got a picture? Don't worry about it. I don't need one. Where's she gonna be? It's like, holy crap, man. I'm like, there are so many better ways to do that. I'm like, I'm walking around. You could have just been like, hey, start chatting me up on the walk. I wasn't really running right then, so it's like, yeah. So, have you been convicted of a felon? Are you a registered sex offender? There's so many ways it's gonna happen.
Start with those two first, right?
Right, exactly. Not are you single? That would be like the last on my list. And great, are you single? No. And you would already know, I've never been convicted of a crime against children or a felony or done hard time or So
question though.
Dude, that was bizarre.
So when it caught you off guard, if he started throwing, would you have been caught off guard?
No, because I set my distance. Absolutely not.
You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then absolutely not.
Talk about screwing with you, Luke.
Plus, let me just put it this way. Also, he didn't look like he would be a problem, unless he had a weapon, unless he had a firearm.
I mean, he could have been like a featherweight Golden Gloves. You don't know.
Yeah, I do. You could tell. Yeah,
not this guy.
You could tell. Yeah. You could automatically tell. I think it's funny. Peter Berg was on Rogan and he was talking about look, he goes, and this is so true. If any, he's like, you can tell by the way a guy holds his hands to get wrapped if he's like Canelo Alvarez, right? You're like, you can just tell the way they lace up their shoes, the way they walk. Predators have a certain gait and an air about them. There's no doubt about it. When a dude is a dude. And and you should just, your instincts are not wrong. Let's put it that way. He was bounding up. Excuse me. I was like,
I had a lot of people, even in the military, which I still don't understand, but I had a lot of people who were like, guys in the military who were like, Kaywood, when you start serial killing everybody, just remember we're your friend. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. They're like, no, we know. They're like, we know that you're going to kill people. I'm like, thank you.
Oh my God. Yeah, right? It's like, hey, just don't fuck with my stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Did you see that? It's on Netflix. I know Josh didn't see it. He doesn't watch anything. There's a thing called Gone Girl. It's about the Long Island killer.
I've heard of it.
They did a movie. So they hung 10, 11 murders on this guy. I think he probably did a lot more than that, just because he was an architect and he lived in Massapequa, Long Island. He had an office on Madison Ave in Manhattan, so really high rent place.
Mm-hmm.
He did something. He was an architect, but he did something with more to the point of like helping, facilitate permits and crap like that in the city. So he found a niche. Yeah, he would call these prostitutes off a Craigslist, get them out to his house or a hotel or something, because he had a family, he had a wife and 2 kids, not a good looking woman, weird fucking kids. He grew up in the house that he lived in, which was incomplete. It didn't look like it got a coat of paint since the 50s, right? I mean, really kind of hoarder, gross. You saw it, the house. We've all seen them. There's at least one in every, area or neighborhood. So,
yeah.
So the one girl who's, look, they're preying on prostitutes because they're easy.
Yeah.
Timothy Marshall. Did I kill anyone in Afghanistan? Oh, let me just share it. Hold on, wait. Hold on, let me just sort of
nice,
share.
Tim. Nice.
Yeah, wait, hold on a second. Yeah. They kill I'm 92G, so it's possible. That doesn't count as friendly fire.
and then 92G food service.
Yes, yeah, right. Just like no, nicely done.
Come on, Tim. Tell the truth. You didn't cook anything. All the civilians did.
Right. Right. So it's just a point of. I just want to say something about like how it was handled by law enforcement. So these prostitutes are going missing. Of course, everyone's like, they're not. You can't say prostitute. What are we saying? Sex worker, whatever. And they're saying that, this could happen to. This they said he did on my camp. All right. So this can happen to anybody or any girl. No, you're on a high risk,
right.
job. It's like saying when a drug dealer gets killed. I'm like, you're doing criminal shit. That's what happens. The problem is
play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Yeah.
Yeah. And the reality is law enforcement doesn't put a lot of value on these lives. They don't. And it's a shame, but when you're like, okay, we've got another dead prostitute, all right, she disappeared. They didn't find the body. She could have taken off. She could have run away. She could be in Las Vegas.
A lot of them run a circuit.
So, yeah. So you're like, we don't know. And I get that.
Yeah.
The problem was, the one girl reported. So the one mom wound up reporting her daughter missing, and she was one that started like protesting and crap like that until finally months later, somebody said they found bones, in this one area.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turned out they weren't, they were actually human remains. And then they found 4 girls' bodies there.
Yeah, close by.
And then they went ahead and found another 2 bodies, and one with a baby, so a mother and a child, which is bizarre. But finally, they didn't like the mother. They still didn't find the original girl until, she kept bitching, and they finally searched the place like where they wanted her to search, which was, a farther down. They finally did find her, right? But it was like the whole way it was handled was bizarre. They didn't convict the guy. They didn't catch a guy. This was like in 2011. They didn't catch the guy until 2024. So he was operating that they know of from like 1990 for like 20 years, right? And he had like copious notes. He basically had a blueprint on how to like, kill, dispose of bodies, shit like that. So probably was taking him when he had the opportunity, getting him to his house, taking him down, taking him in his basement and torturing them for God knows what these poor girls went through. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, I guess, point is, it's like, you're on your own with this shit. A lot of it, I'm like, after the fact, you'll be lucky if, unless it's somebody unless it's like, your spouse, somebody, business partner, somebody, unless there's a motive to connect you.
Right.
You are fucked, man. And that's when these people like talk. I'm sorry, go, Clay.
No, I was just going to say when most homicides are committed by people who are known to the victim. So when you start running through their associations, their family members, you find links. But a lot of times with serial killers, especially later on in their career, so to speak, maybe not the first couple where they may target somebody that they know, but later on when they're not random, but unless you understand the motives of each individual killer, they appear to be random victims.
Right. Right.
And there's absolutely no connection between the killer and the victim to to pick up on. And that's one of the things that makes it so challenging to try to catch those people.
Did you watch Mindhunters? That's on Netflix.
Yes,
it's a Netflix.
Yes, I
that
did
was
see
awesome.
that. And of course, I've read the book that it was based on.
Yeah, I thought that was done really, really, really
It
well.
was, especially the guy that really struck me as pretty authentic as far as that goes was Kemper.
Yeah,
Edmund
Kemper. Yeah, the big dude.
Yeah, that dude played him because I've seen interviews from the actual Ed Kemper. That he nailed that. Yeah, very intelligent guy. Very intelligent, very articulate.
That actor was in Mickey 17, and I couldn't fix a face because they had him kneeling a lot because the actor was really big, just like Kemper was. And I'm like, the voice, I'm like, I know that voice. I'm like, holy crap. But yeah, Kemper I thought was done like really well. But they had a lot of tape on him. He was pretty chatty. And these guys, but when they talk about motivation and why, and then all of a sudden it's like you're fitting a type, right? So and you're presenting yourself in a situation. But then some of them, like what's his name, the guy who stabbed the nurses in Boston. That was just Speck. Yeah, Richard Speck. That was just a target of opportunity. Like he just
pretty much
went in there and
lost track of one of them, and that's the only one that lived and escaped.
Right. I mean, it's these and you're doing this stuff, and you're sitting there, and you're like, it's harder now because of all the cameras and surveillance and trapping we have for these guys. But it's still it's like it's not going on. But then it'll rear its head in other ways. Maybe the DC sniper would have been a serial killer, right? You're like looking at these people that do this shit, and they're out there. I mean, again, you're putting yourself, in if you have an occupation of risk that operates outside the law, you're less likely to talk to the law,
right? You're going to avoid, and it's just like one of the big contributors back in 1888, the Jack the Ripper murders. The victims were prostitutes, and they were in the habit of finding men and taking them to secluded areas. I mean, you don't have to hunt them. They'll come up to you, and then they will lead you to a dark alley to do the business.
Right.
So, I mean, it was easy, in that case.
Yeah. But and again, these guys are, they're hunting, and they, it's like any other predator doing anything, whether it's a criminal or so. They're looking for targets of opportunity with the least amount of resistance or no resistance whatsoever in order to impose their will over, and that works on personal security. That's what this what everything all this is. It's maintaining your personal security through managing your environment, right? So you're like, these girls are not taking their cell phone, they're not checking in. And then the one guy that was living with one of the victims, I mean, these guys are skells beyond skells. I mean, they are criminals. What's his name? The guy, Rex Schuerman, that's the killer. He came into the house, and they came into the house, he was arguing with her over money. But again, then she wound up going to meet him and left her cell phone on purpose. Like he told her not to bring her cell phone. So it was like, why would you do that? it's, these, you're looking at these mistakes that are made, and all of them, at some point, you can tell, especially women can tell. They're hyper aware of danger.
Sometimes they are. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, women's intuition is real. I mean, when a woman becomes, when they go through puberty, they realize what's on the table. And,
right.
They know, like, that's why I trust my wife more than anybody when it comes to, getting a vibe on somebody, because I mean, I could be enamored by whatever, but she'd be like, that guy's kind of fucking, that guy's off, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen to that. But, that's real. I mean, they said, we talked about Gift of Fear before.
Right.
It mentions that a lot. I mean, it's like, you got to pay attention to that, because
that spidey sense goes off for a reason.
Yeah,
it may be nothing, but what is it? Nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing maybe at that point, but given the right circumstances, maybe it's, I need a couple drinks. Maybe it's, I need to get you a loan. Maybe it's, okay, maybe I got to get you in my car, right?
Right, which is the one thing you're never going to do.
Right, but it's
don't ever let anybody put you in the car, because it's whatever you want to do to me, you're gonna have to do right here, buddy, because they want you alone in a secluded area and time. That can't be good for you.
Yep, that's what crime scene 1 and crime scene A and crime scene B. Crime scene A is where they make contact. Crime scene B is where they find your body.
Bingo.
And even if they're like, and they look at stuff. I mean, we talk about this, a lot through all the training, but again, they're gonna leverage their reasoning on you to get you to do what they want to do. It's gonna, like, BTK Killer would would do that. He was big with, he would be like, okay, look, it's like, I'm gonna wind up, I know you're gonna call the cops, but I'm just gonna have to tie you up. And then, you tie him up, you tie him up, you tie him up, and okay, great. Then I tie you up. Okay. And then once everybody was tied up, then
that's when we
begin.
Right.
But again, you're looking,
started.
It's like, dude, this is like day one shit. It's like, never trust your assailant. Anyone who's willing to, like, to forcefully, impose your will over you doesn't have the same moral compass and value set that you do. It's so anything they say can't be trusted. That's it. They're lying. Everything they're doing is lying, and everything they want to do, they want to hurt you. Period. End of story.
Yep. So it's all deception.
Yep. All right, guys. So we went long. Okay, that was great.
Way over.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. That's awesome. We were saying bat time, bat channel. I think Easter week we won't be doing it because I'm going to be traveling. But that's it. So until next time, everybody, train honestly. Peace.
All right.